Look now, I don't want any of y'all to confuse me as one of these all is well types. I think the reason why a lot of channels that talk about gloom and doom are so successful is that people have a sense that something isn't right. Now, these gloom and doom channels, they'll promote that, they'll exploit that, and see what they can fleece off of the people that are uh, a student to that approach that something's wrong. So they provide them with, oh, look, here's what's wrong. A couple of things that I see that are wrong is how it seems like the books are cooked as far as the data that they take in. The consumer product basket, where they take a bunch of samples of different items in the market, food items, and they see what the price is to determine how strong the buying power of the dollar is against their intervention. I'm a free market guy. I identify myself as an anarcho-capitalist. I'm not so ignorant as to think that there may not be a place for intervention. Certain booms and crashes being avoided are evidence to that. However, as a case study, I believe a small part of my audience may be a little young to remember, but there used to be this town called East Berlin. And East Berlin was what was left over in World War II when the Soviets were pushing to Berlin, and then we were pushing, the Allies were pushing on the other side from the western side. And the whole time, many of us growing up, we lived on the other side of what we used to call the Iron Curtain in the Soviet Union. And we were taught and we were instructed that the biggest difference between us and them had to do with the government dictated everything. The government dictated the market, all the pricing, everything, the value of the currency, what people got. It was just all open. The problem with that has to do with the more complex a society becomes, the more moving parts there are to the end product. In a free market, if you want to build an end product that's complex, let's say the computer that we're talking about here, that we're talking about on this computer and you're watching this from a computer, there are components to the final construction of that computer all along the way that need to have uh, provision. The I don't know, the silver, it comes to mind, that's in the circuit board, the carbon materials, just everything, all the way down to the aluminum that constructs the case of this computer that I'm talking about on. Without the free market and without honest price finding, you'll never truly know if you can afford to create that end market. Do you want to know why the Soviet Union ultimately collapsed? Because they didn't have true value in their products. They lasted for a long time, being able to look to us to cue what the values were based on our market, because everything in the Dow Industrial Average, retail pricing, you name it, they were able to look to us to kind of see the value, and that elongated how long they lasted. That brings me to East and West Berlin, two towns that you could argue that maybe West Berlin had more industry left, but I don't know. I'm inspired by one of my old friends on here, Kiwi Ted Fernie. He's a little bit older than I am, but he was able to see East Berlin towards the tail end of its ultimate collapse. And he recalls in a story seeing that tattered old Soviet Union flag compared to the crisp German flag of West Germany. And you could just see the contrast. And he had hoped, in what he said, he had hoped that they leave that tattered flag up there as a reminder of what The differences were between the two types of economy. Again, it has to do with true price value, true price finding, to know if you can afford to move in a certain direction. When we were growing up, we would hear stories about bread lines and all this other stuff that we couldn't possibly even imagine, you know. They would be more interested in surveilling their people to make sure everybody stayed paying attention. It just blew my mind. And and we couldn't imagine a world that required that level of surveillance for any reason whatsoever. And we were shown images of this sort of thing. You know, you have the classic image of the free people on the left, the western side, and then the guy with the rifle looking to keep the people in. You know you got something wrong when you need a wall to keep people in your city. And we're left with a contrast of these things occurring in the same times. Cars instead of people walking, buildings just a little bit taller. It's something that I don't intend to forget. And I'm hoping that when these pundits of collapse or economy talk their talk, that they're thinking of the reason why. Because I have my doubts. I have my doubts that a lot of the videos on YouTube have a correct education in really identifying what the problem is. And when we can't correctly identify what the problem is the person, is your host just merely trying to exploit that you think something's wrong? Little food for thought on today's Daily Dose. Y'all take care.